Good morning. And here we are again. We're going to be talking about onions today. I wanted to make sure that you knew that we talked about food waste last week. And if you do happen to have an onion that's a little bit past where it needs to be, you can still reclaim this onion. So we're going to talk about that. You guys have seen how I cut onions, so I'm just going to review that. I also gave you videos that show you other ways to do them. So if you want to learn other techniques, um, like all things in culinary, you want to go ahead and practice your skills. So because I'm going to use large chunks, large slices, I'm just going to cut off the stem end as I always do, leaving the root in place. I want to leave the root in place because that holds the onion together. We've talked about this before. And then this is the part where I want to pull all the onion off. And sometimes it's only a layer or two that needs to go away. Sometimes more than that. You can just cut off whatever pieces are looking a little soft. And cut those off and make those go away. The nice thing about onion is, like I said, it has many layers, and just make sure that it is good, that everything you're looking at looks like, yep, that looks nice and firm and ready to use. You can always use the leftover pieces that are too small. So this guy looks good. This guy's looking good here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slice mine today into really thin slices. Make sure that you've got your knife so that you can, you know where your knife is at all times. You're using good safety. And I'm going to take those so I make my nice thin slices. I'm going to cut up this guy. And then I'm going to move these over to the oven, the stove, and use these slices to caramelize them. So in just a moment, now that I have my onions all together, I am ready to caramelize them. And so we're going to move to the stove. Okay, to caramelize onions, it's actually a pretty easy process. I need some kind of fat. It can be sort of like we did with the saute. I'm going to go ahead and put a reasonable amount in my skillet. I like cast iron skillets because not only do they add extra iron to your food, but they also tend to allow it to have, it's called fund, and the fund is the caramelization on the bottom. As the onion starts to caramelize, it's going to pull out the sugars, as we've talked about, that onions are very high in sugar. Once this starts getting warm, I'm going to toss my onions into the oil, and I'm just going to allow them to start getting broken up in here. And I'm just going to slow cook them, taking all these little pieces that I've cut, put them in here, add a little bit of salt to bring out the moisture, and I'm just going to cook them low and slow for about 15 minutes. So I will see you in about 15 minutes. The onions are here in my cast iron skillet. They are sizzling now. I wanted you to make sure that you heard that sound, always a good sound. And again, I am just stirring them to get them coated by the olive oil and to incorporate the salt in to bring out the moisture. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pat them down. Oops. And I'm going to, sorry, trying to escape. I'm going to go ahead and let these sort of almost like simmer. Different than the saute. The saute I was constantly stirring and trying to keep it so that they were cooking quickly. These I wanted to cook low and slow, so I've got them on medium-low, and I'm going to keep them that way, and we'll check back again. Okay, so it has been 20 minutes since we were doing this, and what you will notice is the onions are now nice and brown and caramely, and they're starting to get crusty on the bottom. That's, as I said, that's called fond. And with that fond, and then when we're going to do that is I want to get all the goodness off the bottom of this. So this is called the glazing. A pan is whenever you add a liquid. So I'm just going to add water, and it sort of sizzles up. And what that sizzling does is it actually comes to a boil, and that boiling will loosen all the goodness off the bottom of that pan and get those little crispy and all that caramelization and all that good stuff. And we'll bring that into my onions, and we'll do that. And in just a moment, my onions are going to be ready for me to eat. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but I started off with a pan full of onions, and now I have just a little bit. They cook down a lot because all the moisture, not all the moisture, but a lot of the moisture is evaporating, and that's causing it to, when I put the salt on, that pulls out the moisture and makes it so I can do that. And so now I have my caramelized onions. So it's not difficult. Slice up the onions however you want, put the oil in the pan, put the onions in the pan, sprinkle them with a little salt, allow them to cook, don't worry them, and what that means is don't stir them too often, just let them stay in the pan. And it takes about 20 minutes for them to get to a nice golden brown when you cook them somewhere between low and medium-low heat. So you want them, because you don't want to burn them, you just want to let them sort of be. And you can walk away and do stuff. I am now going to put them together into a meal that's using something that has my caramelized onions, because that will be the next thing I ask, is that you take a picture, show me what it looks like, and if you want to, you can actually use them to make other kinds of foods and put other things with them. So I'll be back in a minute.